If a company has nothing to hand over in the first place, even if they comply with the law enforcement request, they might only be handing over very superficial information. In fact, this is what makes Signal so powerful, because there have been proven court cases where they've had Signal hand over user data and it's very superficial stuff about the account. It's never messages, it's never people they're talking to. It was when the account was created and also the last time they logged in, which, you know, in some situations might be a problem. It's definitely not perfect, but that's a hell of a lot better than what you'll see in some other services and what they're able to hand over. What a provider knows about you boils down to the actual data. So in the example of messengers, because it's an easy example, that's the actual messages you're sending to people. So a common way to avoid collecting that data is to implement end-to-end encryption. So none of these services can hand over actual messages. But that's kind of a bare bones step one nowadays. From there, we like to go and see metadata collection and what kind of metadata is protected and what the service doesn't see. And then we can even go a little bit beyond that sometimes to even any unique identifiers collected in the first place. That's where Signal might fall, because Signal still collects a phone number. And then I'm going to combine the last couple points that IVPN makes about pretty much things that you can do before things go wrong. And it's having a protective privacy policy as well as being transparent about requests. What this boils down to is there's a privacy policy that clearly details what they collect, what they don't collect, situations where things can go wrong. They're going to detail exactly what is used for what. And that's very important because you now have the ability to take a peek inside at least what a company is saying. And a lot of companies, if you read what they're saying, it's actually, people say, well, what if they're lying about their privacy policy? Sometimes they don't even have to get that far. A lot of VPN companies just straight up tell you the information they collect, and a lot of it's not fantastic. So before we even get into the are they lying about their privacy policy, a lot of services, even if you take what they're saying at face value, you still want to avoid them. So that already eliminates a huge portion of the market.
I'm still going to always recommend an Apple iDevice over like any Android device to most people in my life. It's just generally going to be better for privacy and security for them, from what I've done and what I've researched. Personally, I'm a big fan of Apple Pay because generally it is better from a privacy perspective than just using a credit card. So I personally don't have a huge issue with Apple Pay. But either way, it's not a huge deal because when you use Apple Pay, and I think Google Pay as of Android 13, don't quote me on that, but they're actually giving merchants different card numbers already. So they're not getting your real card information if you're using Apple Pay. So I guess it's kind of questionable what privacy.com is bringing to the table in that regard. But what's really cool is you can now on your phone conveniently just use Apple Pay with a privacy.com card online. So if you're checking out on a website and it supports Apple Pay, you just check out with Apple Pay and use the privacy.com card. And that's much quicker than having to go in and out of the privacy.com app.
Is this guy a retard?
And also transparent about requests. I like to see warrant canaries. I like to see transparency requests. I like to see annual reports. I like to see that kind of stuff. Mullvad has nothing like this. Mullvad has stated, at least to me in the past, that, well, it's marketing because they could just put out any BS numbers and people just have to believe it anyway. But that's kind of missing the point, in my opinion, because when you do release numbers and you release data, you're now holding yourself to something.
And they fucking bought that.
Like discount PC.
You cheeky dick waffle.
Even if what you're saying is not truthful, if it ever leaks that that wasn't truthful, now that company's in a buttload of trouble. And so when you're putting yourself out there and putting out those numbers and putting out transparency requests, you're still putting something at risk in favor of your users.
The truth is, we could make a ton of money if we monetized our customer. If our customer was our product, we could make a ton of money. We've elected not to do that. right? But you are not our product. You are our customer. You are a jewel, and we care. We care about the user experience.
Now, we compare this to something like a big tech company, just a generic big tech company. If they get a law enforcement request, a lot of times they just comply outright. And a lot of times there aren't protections in place, especially if we look at a company like Google. A lot of Google's cloud products don't really implement end-to-end encryption. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. For example, your emails aren't. So if anyone wants to request your emails, Google's lawyers might try to fight for you.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
So I think that perspective on this issue is very important. When you're looking at companies like Proton, Signal, all of these services are going to suffer the same issue. They're all going to have to comply with law enforcement unless it's some kind of decentralized project. And so, some takeaways. Again, you can avoid centralized entities altogether. If you go through a centralized entity, look at the precautions they put in place to protect you, including things like not collecting information in the first place when they can, or if they're going to do that, take a look at their transparency reports and things of that nature. But broadly speaking, I'd say the most important takeaway is just being educated and aware. If you liked this, I definitely encourage you to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/techlore. Really appreciate it. You guys are all freaking awesome.
And then Caption 8169 asked about security for like banks and brokerage accounts, and we will probably get back to that in just one short. So we'll probably have 3 shorts this upcoming week before we come back next week for the next Surveillance Report 131.
I fight for the users.